Hi everyone, my name is Matthew, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Matt.
So I'd just like to start off by thanking my higher power, this program, my sponsor and the fellowship, because I wouldn't be in the seat today if it wasn't for those things. So I'm just going to speak about how it was and what it's like now in recovery. So I was born into a loving family. I was given and provided for to the best of their ability. But my perceptions on that obviously were taunted and weren't what I would have liked them to be as I grew up. I had a father who was from our sister fellowship who was struggling with his addiction. So I really didn't get to know him in my early years of my childhood. So all that side of the family. So I kind of stayed with my mom and my gran and my grandpa for quite some time. And then it moved on where my mom got into a relationship with another guy and he had my sister. They were engaged and everything. And that's kind of where I started, where I can remember my first kind of alcoholic behavior coming into my life. Which was, so I don't know if any of you know the Eat Some More biscuits. My mom used to stock them in the pantry cupboard. I think I was about maybe 3 or 4. And we were only allowed to eat the biscuits after supper. Like, those were my favorite biscuits. But I can remember stealing the whole box in the afternoon and going behind the house and eating all of them. Obviously not asking if we could have a biscuit and not only having one, but having the whole box. And that's kind of sums up, my disease. And that's kind of the earliest memory I have of being dishonest. Going forward, I just started my behavior around dishonesties got worse and worse and worse, where I couldn't go a day without being dishonest, and that's not normal for a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, kind of the little things I did was like, I'd go to my room and my mom, the first cell phone came out, it was a Motorola, and I used to play that snaky game on my mom's phone, and I used to steal my mom's phone during the night to play that game all through the night, once again not asking, being dishonest about it, creeping back into a room and plugging it in on charge. And that's kind of how life went on for me with my dishonesties. Back to my mom's relationship with this guy, after she fell pregnant with my sister, we came back to Durban because we lived in Joburg. We came back to Durban to visit my gran and my grandpa. And then my mom got a phone call from Brett, who is my sister's dad, telling us not to come back. He's going to ship down all our clothes. Because he's found someone else. And I think that's when I had my first resentment, and it was a very big resentment that carried out through the rest of my active alcoholism, which was the resentment against male authority. I didn't like male authority. I didn't like being told what to do. As I grew up, it was like fuck the patriarchy type of vibe, and I would do everything in my power to go against what another male said. With that, there was a lot of disappointment. Life changed for me. I had to move back in with my gran and my grandpa in Durban. And then at the age of 7, my mom said to me, you have a choice to make. You can either get to know your dad and his side of the family, or you can choose not to get to know him and carry on as things have been going. And I chose to obviously meet my dad for the first time and get to know that other side of the family. I think I was about 7 years old. And things were good for the first couple months, I was starting to get to know my father. I started to get to know his side of the family, my cousins, my uncles, his mom. And then something happened when I was 7 with my stepbrother on my dad's side. So different mom, same dad. I was 7 years old and we just got back from the beach and I was told to go and shower, so that's what I did. I went into the shower and I started showering, and my stepbrother, who was older than me, came into the shower and molested me. At the time, I really didn't know what was going on. The feelings were very uncomfortable. I knew it wasn't right what he was doing. My gut was telling me that this isn't okay, but I didn't know how to react. And because of that incident, not knowing what to do, sitting with all that emotion and all that fear and not knowing where to put it and afraid to tell people because I've just met these people and he's grown up with them, and I didn't think they trust me or believe me. So I buried that way down, somewhere where I never had to look at it again. But because I did that, I started to become a very angry person, at life, at the world, at my family. Basically anything that I had a chance to be angry with, I'd use that. And that's kind of what I used in my active alcoholism, was the fact that I was molested and I didn't know what to do with all that fear, so I just buried it deep down and reacted on my anger. As well as the disappointments that came when my dad relapsed and had to go back to a treatment center, because I put all that effort in to get to know him, not kind of understanding what this disease is at that time, which obviously furthered my resentment against male authority. As time went on, I got into high school. My primary school phase wasn't something I enjoyed. I didn't fit in. I didn't know who I was. I had this feeling that there was something different about me, that I wasn't the same as everyone in the room, and I struggled to make friends in primary school. I can remember that very clearly. I didn't have a set of friends. I'd go home and I'd spend the weekend with my family. My family was also very religious. We went to church every Sunday. We're Roman Catholic. So that kind of was how I was introduced to the God concept, and because of things that I later discovered in high school, I decided to not be Catholic. I had a huge resentment against God because of things that happened in my life, as my molestation, not knowing, why would he do this to me? Why would I be presented with this experience? So high school is when all the masks came up, I believe, because grade 8, I went into an all-boys school, and I was like, okay, this is going to be, these years need to be beneficial for me. I need to make friends. I need to be the coolest person. I need to be the main O. And that's when I started putting on the masks, and I became a chameleon, fitting into different social groups, to try to be accepted. My first group of friends, I hung out with, you could say, the nerdy people, the people that didn't go out, that played Xbox all day and drank energy drinks to stay up through the night. And then when those group of friends, I'd like to say, I outgrew because they weren't the group of friends that I wanted to be with, I changed my personality, I changed my characteristics, and I moved on to the next group. And that basically was my high school career. And with that came my coming out as gay, because in high school I was a very scared person, very fearful, with a lot of anger, and I didn't know who I was or what I liked, and kind of experimenting on this gay app called Grindr, where I'd meet up with guys and I'd try to explore my sexuality. And that kind of became an addiction for me, because I didn't have any self-worth, and I'd use sex as an escape, to feel better. But always afterwards, I can remember I felt like the shittiest person in the world. I had this feeling in my gut that what I was doing at that age wasn't right. And I'd remember I was still religious. I wasn't going to church, but I'd only pray when I needed to pray. And I can remember every time after those sexual encounters, I'd get on my knees and I'd just ask God to forgive me and give me a second chance, because what I'm doing I know is wrong. And that never worked. It carried on. It was insane. It happened again. I tried everything else to try to stop that, but it just didn't work. And then in grade 10, I decided to come out to my friends in school that I was gay. That didn't go very well because it was a boys' school, and I was teased and bullied and physically and emotionally. And that's when I decided, to bury that feeling as well. I was in my first relationship when I was in grade 10, my first gay relationship. It was a very abusive relationship because I didn't know what I was doing. I was cheating on him because I was obviously doing my thing on Grindr. I was lying to my family about my sexuality, and I would meet up with this person like undercover. And going through high school like that, I felt like I was living three lives, one life in front of my family, one life in front of my friends, and then this secret undercover life as a gay person. With that, obviously not knowing who I was, I went into grade 11, and that's kind of where my alcoholism started. I found, I come from the fellowship, the sister fellowship, so I found my drug of choice in grade 11, and I wouldn't like to say that like it was a problem for me then. Definitely my behavior was the cause of everything. I can remember my behavior was out of bounds or was shocking. It wasn't normal for someone my age. None of my friends were acting the way I was acting. But because I couldn't deal with the fact that I wasn't accepted, or my perception on life was that I wasn't accepted, and that my higher power, which was God, didn't care about me because of all the events that I went through in my early childhood, I started using my drug of choice as an escape. The first time I ever did it, I felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. I felt like I could take on anything that came my way. And it started off as like a social thing, but then it soon became uncontrollable, like where I was doing it at home, I was doing it at school, I would miss school to use my drug of choice. And then in grade 11, I had a near-death experience where I was doing a life-saving competition because I was an SA lifesaver and I was good at that sport. And I had a near drowning where I got knocked off my ski. The conditions of the water weren't that great. I got knocked off my ski and I got hit in the back of the head by the ski and I drowned. I had hypoxia on the right side of my brain. I had 20% water in my lungs, and I was in and out of a coma for about a week in ICU. And after that, I couldn't remember a lot of things. I had to gain my memory back, my motor functions. I had to go to physio and use a crutch because I couldn't walk properly. And through that experience, I also felt that I don't want to use this term lightly, but I felt like I was a retard, and that I can't go back to school like this. No one's everyone's gonna think I'm weird, like they're not gonna accept me again. But my mom forced me to go to school, and so I did. Through this accident, I started having pseudosomatic seizures, which is a form of PTSD. I would have these seizures through smell, sights, anything that reminded me of the situation. And for a long time, people thought it was epilepsy, but we ran a lot of tests and it wasn't. I started going to therapy to try work my way through this, and it worked. I stopped having seizures, but I learned something when I had seizures, that if I have a seizure, I could get anything I wanted. And so I started faking my seizures afterwards. Everyone thought it was still happening, so they didn't understand why it was happening, but it was still happening because I wanted it to happen. And through these seizures, this dishonesty became bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'd use it to go home from school if I didn't want to be at school. I'd use it to get out of an exam if I didn't want to write this exam. or any uncomfortable situation that I didn't want to be in, I'd fake a seizure. I can remember I think it was Easter, and we were having Easter lunch at my grand's house, and the whole family was there, and because I didn't want to be there, I faked a seizure and everyone had to rush. Matthew had to go to hospital. It was all about me. My whole act of alcoholism was about Matthew. I didn't give a fuck about anyone else. It was what I wanted and what I wanted to do, and you had to do what I had to do, you know. Going forward, I'll move to matric. And in matric, obviously after my accident, I started using more drugs, and it started to become a crutch for me. I was very dependent on the substances, and it became very out of control. I can remember I was in and out of psychosis. I attempted suicide. I punched my grandfather in the face and told him to go fly a kite. And I got rushed off to a psych ward, which was one of many stints. And that just carried on, the insanity and the chaos that just carried on from what I was going through and what I was doing to myself, and the way I was treating my family and my friends, living these double lives, not, you know, knowing who I was. It was unbearable. I can't remember life being that stiff, you know. But after my suicide attempt and my stint in psych ward, I refused to go back to school because I couldn't face all those people. So my mum decided to enroll me into a home school, and that lasted about 2 months. And I was back in a psych ward. And that's kind of when I think my family kind of knew that there was a problem with me, that I had this disease, and that I couldn't control my using and I couldn't control my behavior. So they ran a bunch of tests and they got the results back of the stuff I was on. Half of the shit I didn't even know I was on, but apparently I was. And my mum said to me, you either get help or you can live on the streets, because I can't do this with you anymore. The countless disappointments, the lying, the anger, the abuse. You know, I wasn't a good brother to my 2 sisters. I wasn't a good son to my mother. I wasn't a good family member to the rest of my family. I was a horrible friend. I'd only use people when it benefited me, you know. People with money, people with status, people that had the drugs that I wanted to use. I became a leech, and I was just sucking the life out of everything around me. As well as my self-worth went out the window, you know. I started to think that I was a horrible person. I couldn't bear the sight of myself. And I just didn't want any sort of interaction with the outside world. So I started to isolate myself. I started to sit in my room all day, and that's kind of where my using happened, was in my room, you know, until the point where I couldn't do it anymore, and I had to make the choice to go to treatment. And I attended treatment at the house on the hill here. Going into treatment, I was told I was a very angry person, which I was, but I found out that the underlying factor of that was fear of what happened in my life, and I couldn't face that fear because I was very good at hiding it deep down, you know. I wasn't a very good example of a patient in treatment. I was disobedient, I was angry, I'd test the boundaries, but you know, I owe my life to the treatment centre up on the hill, because I don't think I'd be sitting here today if I hadn't gone through those steps. You know, I was introduced to this program, the raw program. I was given my reality, and I was given my life back, even though I wasn't grateful at the time and I didn't want to be there. I kind of had to come to terms with the fact that my father's an addict, and he still struggles at the moment. So, you know, I do believe this disease is hereditary. Going through the steps, it wasn't an easy task. I hated school, so I felt like this was school because I had to sit in these rooms and write my steps out. But it was a very nice feeling, you know. I can remember the most powerful experience I've ever had in recovery is doing my step 5, when my sponsor sat me down and went through what I had written in my step 4. And I got to the part where I wrote about my brother and how he molested me, and my sponsor looked up at me and he said to me, like, I know this isn't something easy, and I know it's not something you want to face, but I need to know if you're ready to forgive. And I looked at him and I was like, I went silent, I couldn't speak. And we went through the rest of my step 11. But I went back to that afterwards because I couldn't handle it at the time, and I said to him, you know, with the understanding that I have so far of this program, you know, I think I want to give it a shot. And the most powerful experience I had was sitting by the lake under the tree, and I just let it go, and I felt free. All the weight was lifted off my shoulders. Everything that I was fearful of, everything that I hid deep down inside of me was taken, and that was a very, very high power moment for me. Coming into this program, I didn't want to believe in any higher power, but I was told that I couldn't do it alone. So for a little while, my higher power was my sponsor, then it became the group, and then it became the universe. And I have a better understanding of my higher power today, and I'm really, really grateful that I have a connection with my higher power. Going out of treatment, I moved into the halfway house. That was a very scary phase for me because I didn't know what I was going to do. I hadn't passed matric, I dropped out of school. I thought that I couldn't get a job. But because I put in the action, but because, you know, I wouldn't sit and not do anything about it, and by putting in that action, by making a CV, and I literally walked the streets of Scottsboro for like 5 days just to try and find a job. And by the grace of my higher power, I got offered a job at Spur, and I started working there. And that was very humbling because I was someone who got given everything he ever wanted on a silver platter. I was born with a silver spoon up my arse. Even though my family weren't well off, they'd bend over backwards and they'd give me everything. I mean, my mom sold her life to get me to where I am today, and I'll be forever grateful for that. My halfway house experience, I was there for 2 months, but because of my behavior, because of my dishonesties and my rebelliousness, I was asked to leave, which is understandable. And I moved back home, and that was also a big moment for me in my recovery. And that's where I found the true essence of this program and where my life was, tested. I didn't want to look at it as a negative experience because I don't think I would be here today. I looked at it as my higher power telling me that I need to go make amends at home, and I need to show them the person I am becoming, and that I am not stuck in my active alcoholism anymore. But through treatment, through the halfway house, it was a good experience. I always look forward to the meeting we had in the morning with Don Tate, and kind of getting an understanding that the experiences that I go through aren't good or bad. They're just life. And this program gives me the ability to walk through life and face it head on. Someone shared on Friday Musgrave, he's here today, about fear. Fuck everything and run. And how he looks at it today as face everything and rise. And that's what I'm trying to do. One step at a time, just for today. I'm immensely grateful to this program for giving me my life back, because I never ever thought at my age I'd be abstinent from any mind or mood altering substance. I'm only 19, but in the 18 years of active, I wasn't living. I was dormant. I was a ghost. I felt like I was dead. I had nothing to offer the world. I had nothing to offer myself. And through this program, I've gotten the gifts of recovery. I remember sitting in a one-year share in this room when I first got to treatment, and I heard someone share about all the gifts he got. He got the car, he got the job, he got the family, his connections back, and I was like, I want all of those. And coming into recovery and working my program, I've gotten gifts, but it's not necessarily what I wanted to get, but I am fucking amazed at what I have achieved. I have a job today. at a salon. I was able to get into college to start learning hairdressing and studying hairdressing. My connection with my family is there's no words to describe that. I mean, I have such a connection with my mom today. It's unbelievable. I would never ever speak to my mom. I wouldn't say 2 words to her. And we have like 3-hour conversations, you know, on the couch. I'm able to speak to her about boys now, whereas I could never speak to her about anything, you know, because I didn't want to be honest with myself. I didn't want to be honest to her. In recovery, I had to humble myself, you know, I had to come out to my family and friends. And that was a very fearful experience, you know, but I walked through it, and life today is amazing, you know. There's nothing I can't face because I have this program, I have this book that tells me how to live life. I have a connection with my brother today that I never ever thought I'd ever have, you know. I don't see him a lot, but when I do see him, you know, it's not, there's no fear, there's no anger, there's no resentment. It's just me and my brother, and I've come to terms with the fact that he did what he did, and he was going through something at that time, and that's obviously why he decided to do what he did. But it's all thanks to this program, you know. It's fucking amazing. I'd have no words. I'm just really grateful, really grateful. I'm in a relationship today. That's something I never thought I'd be able to tackle. I got into a relationship before my 1 year, and it was suggested to me not to, and I didn't follow that suggestion, and I can understand why people suggest it, because it's hard. It's fucking hard. But I've made it because I had a connection with my higher power, I believe. I send my inventories every day. I get on my hands and knees every single day, every single night, and I just hand everything over. Anything that I can't handle, I hand over, and that's just how I live my life, you know. So yeah, thanks for letting me share.